Hello everyone, today we're going to create a simple 2D character animations based on our character controller we've made the last time. First I'm going to make a few adjustments in our player. First of all, go to your rigid body component, change your linear drag to 5, also change the collision detection to continuous, interpolate to interpolate, and sleeping mode to never sleep. It will improve your collision and make your movement smoother. Okay, so first of all we need to get your player sprites. I also have a sprites for my character. I will share the link in the description that you can also get the sprites. So we have a few different sprites for idle animation, jump, run, and etc. other animations. So first we need to slice our sprites. Just choose the sprites, and in the inspector, first of all we need to choose the sprite mode from the single to multiple. The filter mode changed to the point, which means that you are applying no filter, and the compression changed to none because you don't want to compress our sprites to avoid losing the quality. Apply the changes and go to your sprite editor. And here we want to slice our sprites. So I'm not changing anything because I want the slice being automatic, so I'm just pressing the slice button and apply. As you can see now, when we press the button, we will see that our sprites are separate. What I also want to do is change the pixels per unit from the 100 to something like 24, because if I'm not change anything, you can see that if I'll drag my sprite, it would be really small. And to change the size, we just can change the pixels per unit value to something like 24, and as you can see, it's great enough size for our scene. Now I want to make the same manipulations to our sprites for the run animation and for the jump. Okay, now we can start creating our animation. So now I actually want to change my player sprite from the square to our player sprite we have here. So I can do it by simply drag our idle, the first of our idle sprites, to our sprite renderer. But we also need to change the scale from 1.7 to 1, and we need to reset our capsule collider and also reset the box collider. And now we need to change the size of our collider to something as it was before, and I also want to change the offset to something like -0.75 to make sure that it is below our player collider. And I also want to make it trigger. So now we can start creating our animations. You need to go to your window, animation, and animation. And you will see an animation window, but I already have it in my navigation, so I left it here. So once you click the player, you can press the create button to start creating your animations. But make sure that you will choose the correct folder to save your animation. And I propose to save all the animations in animation folder in your assets folder. So as we're creating the idle animation, let's call it player idle because it makes sense. This is our player idle animation. And I'm going to press the save. So now we just need to select all our sprites and drag it to the animation window. As you can see, if I will press the play button, we are moving very fast, insanely fast. We need to increase the time of our animation to something like it. Okay. It's good, but as you can see that our player animation is not so smooth as we want. We can just get our last sprite and copy it to make a duplicate at the end. And if we'll press the animation again, it will look smoother on our scene. And we can again get this all and maybe decrease the duration a bit. Okay, now this looks better. And let's delete this sprite from our scene because we don't need it anymore. We already have our player with the idle animation. Okay, so now we need to do the same for run and jump animations. So I'm just pressing here and create a new clip and doing the same stuff. So we've created our animations, and now we can open the Animator tab and press to our player that we can see our animator with our created animations. If you don't see the Animator tab right here, go to your window, Animation and Animator, and you will get your animated window open, such as I have right now. Okay, so let's start from the beginning and let's start from our idle and run animations. First, we need to create a transition from our idle to run and from run to idle. And now we need to create a float parameter called speed, based on which we're going to create the transitions from the idle to run and from the run to idle. Okay, so let's start from the conditions. I want to make a transition from the idle to run in case if my speed is greater than 0.01. I also want to make sure that our transition has not exit time. The transition duration is set to 0 and we don't have a fixed duration. Now let's set the conditions from our transition from the run to idle. I'm going to add a condition when our speed is less than 0.01. I also want to make sure that our transition has not exit time, the transition duration is set to 0 and the fixed duration is off. So to make our animations work, we need to open our script, which we've created the previous time, and add a few more things. First of all, as we are adding the animations, we need to grab the animator component. So I'm gonna create a private animator field, and I'm calling it anim. And I also wanna grab the component in our start method as we were doing with the rigid body 2D. So I'm saying that anim is equal to game object get component, and this time it would be animator. Because as you can see in Unity, when we are starting creating the animations to our player, we have a new component called animator. This component is added automatically when you started to creating any animations to your character, to your player, to your object. So now we are grabbing this component and we want to make manipulations with the animator, which is actually here. So in update method, I want to, so let's say anim.setFloat, and here we need to say which exact the float parameter we want to set. So in this time is speed, because as you can see in our animator, we've created a parameter called speed. And I want to set our speed value to our move horizontal. But here's the thing, move horizontal is the input system, and if we are playing and pressing the A or D buttons or arrow keys, our value is setting from -1 to 1, and we want to avoid to our value be with the minus, we just make it positive. So we can do it using the mass method. So we can just say that mass f.abs and move horizontal. And here is a little mistake. Yep. So actually for just moving horizontally, that's enough. So now we can open our Unity and let's try how it works. Oh, and I almost forgot that we need to set our box collider to trigger, and now we can run our game. And as you can see that we can see now idle animations, which is default state in our animator for our game object. And if we start moving horizontally, you can see that our animation changed to our run animation. However, we are not flipping our character because our animation is only to the right side directly, because we can now flip our animation using our script. So now we need to open our script, and actually there is a few ways how we can flip our character, but I propose the separate method which we will call once we need to flip our character. I also want to create another field boolean called flip, and default value is set to false because by default our character is not flipped. So now I want to create a separate method called flip for the flipping our sprite actually, and here is the way how we can do it. As you can see, if we'll open our Unity, as you can see, if we'll get our sprite here and if we'll change the scale by x from 1 to -1, it would flip our character. So the way how we can flip the character, we need to call the transform and change the value from 1 to -1 to make it flip. First, we need to create a vector2 called, for example, scale, and we will equal it to our game object dot transform, because our scale is in a transform component. So we are taking the transform and we should get the local scale of our object. Now we need to change our scale.x to the same scale but times on -1. And now we need to change our transform local scale to our new scale value. Okay, and I also want to change the flip to the opposite flip. So now we actually need to call our method to make our character flip. And we're gonna do it in update method. So we need to make an if statement. So if our move horizontal is greater than 0 and we are flipped, so then we're gonna call our flip method. And the same thing, I wanna copy it and say else if our move horizontal is less than 0 and we are flipped, we also gonna flip our character. So if we're gonna save it right now and go to our Unity, we can start our game and now we can flip our character. We can run and we have an idle animation. Okay, so that's the result. Then what else is needed? We need to apply our jump. So now for our jump animation, we need to return to our animator and make it transitions to our jump. But I want to make sure that we can jump from any state, not just an idle, run, and etc. Any states we would add in the future. So I'm going to create a transition from the any state to our jump, and from the jump to run, and from the jump to idle. Okay, and now we need to create a new parameter, boolean, for example, is jumping, because we need to make sure and check if we are jumping, then we need to change our animation to player jump, and if we are not, back into the idle or run animation based on which conditions we are satisfying. So from the any state to the jump, I want to set the condition that if our jumping is true, then we're going to apply the animations and use this transition. I also want to make sure that our transition duration is set to 0. Okay, now from the player jump to the idle, I want to make sure that our is jumping value is set to false and our speed is less than 0.01. I also want to make sure that our transition has no exit time and the transition duration set to 0. Okay, now from the player jump to player run, we're also going to create a condition if is jumping is set to false, so we are not jumping, but we can transition to the run animation. That means that our speed must be greater than 0.01, because if we are running, then our speed is greater. Also has exit time and also the transition duration to 0. Now we need to return to our script and make a few updates. So based on that we created a new parameter called is jumping, we just can in our update method also call our animator and set bool, because we created a boolean is jumping and we need to say that this is the is jumping from our animator, and the value we want to provide, this is our is jumping variable we've just created here. We then dynamically take our value of this field and paste it in our is jumping boolean which we've created in the animator. So now we can launch the game and see how it works. So we have an idle animation, we can run, we see the transition from the run to our idle, and we also can jump. So we can jump and transition from any animation to any animation. I also want to make a few adjustments. I want to back to my script and change the jump force, so from the 30 to 20. And here is the few things. If you want to make it accessible not only from the script, and you want to change these values playing in the Unity or in the inspector, so you can just say serialize field before you're creating your variable, and it would be serialized, which means that you can adjust a value of this field inside of your inspector. So let's set the serialize field to our speed, because we want to make an adjustments to our field from the inspector, not every time using our C# script in our editor. I also want to make a serialized our jump force, and I think that's it. So we can save it right now and go back to Unity. And now you can see that in our player controller script, we can adjust the speed and jump force from the inspector. So I can change the jump force from the 30 to 20 right from the inspector, run our game, and we can adjust this value being on the play mode, but they will not saving during the play mode, but however you can change it here, not only from your editor. So that's it. We have an idle animation, we can run, our character is flipping our animation, and we also have jump. So that's it. That's the simple tutorial how you can add an animations to your player, how adjust an animations, and how flip your character. With also the serialized fields that you can change the values you need from the inspector and not just using your editors. So for this moment, that's it. Thanks everyone for watching, and see you soon.